Hey everyone, it's Ryan from the Rocky Mountain Cigar Show here, back for another live Thursday night show. And why wouldn't there be a technical problem right now that requires me to be frozen? Am I frozen, everybody? Am I frozen right now? I'm frozen. Okay, so I this is love it. First show of the year, coming in with tech issues. Hang tight, everyone. Be right back. All right, everyone, give me two shakes here. Had everything running just great, of course, beforehand, but we get into the show here and it wants to give me problems. So no worries here. Hopefully, everybody had a great holiday. We'll go ahead and just kind of fill the room here. I assume everybody can at least still hear me. Don't worry, we have an absolutely fantastic guest, and it's probably a better show when nobody can actually see me, anyways, because I absolutely 110,000% have a face for radio. There we go. Now that everybody can see my ugly mug again, I know that's really, really what everybody was waiting for, and it's gonna skip a little bit for some stupid reason, but we'll work it through. It's okay as long as everybody can hear me fine. The kink will work itself out. I don't quite understand what's happening here, but either way, not gonna screw with it. Thank you everybody for tuning into tonight's show. It's absolutely an honor to start my fourth year here. And it is an absolute honor for the second year in a row to be able to say, welcome to the Rocky Mountain Cigar Show at the Smokin' Studios. Thank you so much, Abe. Thank you so much to all of the partnerships that this show has and continues to have and continues to grow with all the brands that you see represented below here on the ticker. I know I probably look like a really bad dubbed show right now, but as long as you can hear me okay, that's fine. We'll work it out. So again, thank you to everybody that started off the new year with me. This is our first show. I guarantee you the quality of it will get a little bit better. I don't understand. Facebook, it says, is up and running. And I'm able to watch it here, Bruce. Right now, I'm able to watch it. I'm currently watching it, and it doesn't say that the signal went down, and it appears to be live. So I would refresh your page, Bruce, and go from there. But thank you so much for joining in, Bruce. So, quick little bit of show maintenance here. We're going to be doing a lot of fun stuff this year. I'm working something out with Cornell and Diehl to be able to do something special. We're working on doing something really, really fun with Ladisi. I'm going to be doing a big Dunbarton Tobacco and Trust giveaway here. I don't know when. It might be like a March Christmas, but I've got a ton of stuff over here I got to get rid of. So definitely going to need some of you guys to help me take that off my hands, and I know you will. Yeah, we're just going to have a great show. I've got a very special 4-year anniversary show planned. I'm going to be trying to do some giveaways for that as well. So we're just going to have a great year. This is going to be, I think, a fun year for everybody. I've got Mo Cason, Big Mo Cason, for those of you that watched Barbecue Pitmasters on, I think it was TLC. He's coming on in March to start off smoking season the right way. So definitely going to want to be able to watch that episode, as we're trying to get some giveaways for that one too. So this year is hopefully going to be filled with a lot of giveaways. But until those come up here, let's go ahead and dive right in with our guest of the night. Greg, how you doing, brother?
Oh, staying smoky over here. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Please forgive the dubbed look I think my face is giving right now. Um, I don't understand. This is just you don't turn this equipment on for like a couple weeks. You turn it on this morning to test everything out, no issues. I should have just left it on. Um, but either way, I digress. How you doing, Greg?
Doing fantastic. Yeah, we can hear you great. You're a little stilted in the video, but it's catching up now and then. So I'm happy to be here.
That's fine. Stilted's gonna make me look better than even live video. So the blurring effect is trust me, it's gonna work in my favor. Um, so I have been excited. We have a mutual friend, Richard Beard, who I'm pretty sure is watching tonight or will be watching here in a little bit. And we were introduced to each other through Richard. And I've been waiting for this. You were so kind um, to send me some really amazing stuff. You packed that box very very nicely. So I'm gonna go ahead and take this stuff out to show everybody kind of some of the stuff that you sent me, the cigars. We'll pull up your website. We'll go through each cigar, make sure everybody has a firm introduction. But before we do any of that, there's a reason why I didn't introduce you by your cigar brand. I don't know how to say it. And I'm going to need some help. So, as you introduce, please say the name of your company because Fortaleza y Libre Cigars.
You're closer than most. And there's a people pronounce Fortaleza, Fortaleze. That's but Fortaleza, the way I say it, Fortaleza y Libre Cigars. Basically, it means strength. So Fortaleza is a common term in the industry for strength in cigars, and Libre is free, and my last name is Free. So I'm strong and free.
Very, very cool. Very cool. So, introduce yourself, Greg. Tell everybody a little bit about the brand. Then we'll kind of go over the cigars that you were kind enough to send over. And then I'll finally get to pick one. I think I know which one I'm going to go with, which is your newest cigar.
All right.
Um, but go ahead. Tell everybody who you are.
So Greg Free just had a passion for cigars since the early 90s. Started smoking Baccarats and smoked those for 3 years. And then my world was open when I went to my first cigar lounge and was introduced to hundreds of great brands, thousands of facings. And it just opened my mind to the world of cigars. So I kept smoking cigars over the next couple decades. Ultimately decided to start a brand, which is just a crazy idea, and I don't recommend it to very many people. But if you've got a passion for cigars and you want to do something and share that love with other people, start a brand, and that's what we did. You know, in 2013, we started putting money aside. I had a full-time job at the time. Put aside what I thought was a bunch of money and plenty of money. It turns out it takes a lot more money than I thought, but we're still here after 5.5 years. It'll be 6 years in May. We started May 2019 with our first release of the Bodacious. We've now got 7 lines. We've got 22 facings. We've got an event exclusive that we just released a couple days ago, actually, in Ohio. And we're continuing to follow the excitement. The industry's doing some great things against the FDA and the government that's trying to hold us down. And a lot of that support's coming from the people that support small brands like mine. And I'm just happy to be here. So Virginia-based company, factory is in Tampa, Dominican Republic. All of our tobacco, our core tobacco, the Pilado Cubano, is coming from 140-hectare farm in the Cibao Valley. And we're just doing a lot of exciting stuff down there in the DR. So we're happy to be here.
So how did you go about finding a factory? Because that's one of the hardest things, right? It's also one of the most important things. When obviously starting a brand is you don't want to go with the cheapest, you don't want to go with the fly by night. You want to go with a reputable quality manufacturer. How do you, as a gringo, a silvered gringo, just walk around with like a sack of cash and go into a manufacturer and throw it down? Like, tell everybody kind of what that process is like, because that's a daunting thing from my understanding and talking with people that don't know people in the industry.
So it's a great story because I would say that I used to take my kids on a vacation every summer, and the most exciting things that ever happened on vacation were an accident. You know, like a plan fell through and something else came up, and it was great. Same thing with the foundation of my selection of a factory. I was destined to be a Nicaraguan cigar company. And in 2018, I booked a trip. I'm sorry, 2017, 2018. I booked a trip. I think I actually booked it in 2017. Anyway, we were going to go in 2018 to get a beach house. The whole family was going to stay there. My oldest son and I were going to travel up to Esteli, visit 3 factories, and pick one. And then the country went to hell in a handbasket early in 2018. In January, the president of the country raised Social Security taxes, and then he lowered Social Security benefits. And the public stood up and said, we're not going to take that. So they hit the streets. They put up barricades. They were shutting down airports. A couple people got shot. And in the end, I couldn't take my family into that danger zone. So the trip was scheduled for June, and we didn't go. In the meantime, we had been working with a factory in the Dominican Republic through a friend of mine, Henry Cruz, who had a small brand of his own that was being produced at this factory. And they had been producing a couple blends for us. And I realized, look, I spent all this time building the foundation of the company, building the corporation, working on trademarks, getting my tobacco importer's license, like all of the tough government stuff. I had to do something. I mean, all this investment. So I went back down to the DR, visited the factory, had a discussion about what that relationship would look like. And it's a little factory called El Pollito that had never had a US brand. And we were taking a chance on each other. I really wanted to grow with another small company. And so I chose a small factory that had a good reputation in the Dominican Republic. And we've been growing together ever since. It's just been a great relationship. But again, it was just a happy accident. Couldn't get to Nicaragua, wound up in the DR, and things have been just going great.
Well, good. And that's really like I said, that's definitely the hardest thing, because as a new company, it literally, you are trusting somebody thousands of miles away from you that they're going to treat you right. I have a hard time thinking Domino's is going to treat me right 5 miles away. So I mean, I commend you on that. You definitely, you've done well, and I'm really excited to actually be smoking and finally trying yours. Richard's had nothing but great things to say about them. So what I would like to do is I would like to. All right, I had your website up here. Give everybody here, what's your website address?
www.fylcigars.com.
There we go. All right, I'm gonna pull up here your About Us, and we are going to check out your cigars. Now, as I'm pulling this up, before I show it over, tell everybody kind of what the theme of your cigars are. Are they blow you off your butt? Are they going to be more smell-o-mood? Is there a theme? Are they all over the place? Kind of tell everybody a little bit about that.
So I guess the theme really is just kind of exploring the Dominican connection to Cuban tobacco making. Dominican tobacco is, I believe it's the closest to the Cuban style. We're in the same latitude. We're in the same island chain. A lot of the soil types are similar. So we have a way to kind of emulate what's happening in Cuba, but in a very special way that can only be Dominican. So my brand name started as Strong and Free, and because I love strong cigars. But the reality is, when I started blending my own cigars, it was the medium cigars that were really bringing out that essence of the Dominican Republic. So my first cigars were medium. My next line that came out were solid mediums. The third line, we kicked it up a notch to a medium full. but we're all falling in that medium to medium full range right now, with the emphasis for our next release to be a true full. We have an almost mild in the Avalanche. I can't smoke a true mild. It's just too flat for me. So our mild is about a 3 on a scale of 1 to 10, the Avalanche.
I can respect
with
that.
a little bit of white pepper through the whole thing. But for the most part, we're kind of floating around that medium range. And it honestly, that's just where I was finding the flavor. I didn't need to be punched in the face to know what I was smoking.
Good. I like that. I like that. All right. I am going to bring up this article here really quickly. As this is your newest release, from what I can tell. Let me just get this adjusted here. Okay. All right. So, this is from our good friend, William Cooper. We love Coop. Cigar-coop.com for all of your cigar needs. Now, we're starting here because I'm being a little selfish, Greg. I'm being a little selfish. I need to light a damn cigar up. I don't think I've ever been 20 minutes into the show and not had one lit up yet. So, because of that, I want to show everybody the cigar that I'm about to light up, which is the GMFF. Now, this was announced here and was released literally a couple of weeks ago, says to a lounge in Ohio. This is an event exclusive. Okay, so tell everybody what this is, what GMFF means, and I'm going to go ahead and get this thing cut.
So we grew some first generation Cuban seed about 5 years ago, and we've been working on a way to introduce that to our customers. We first released a cigar, the Intimidador, with some of that first generation Cuban seed in it, but we wanted to do something a little special for an event exclusive. And so we came up with a wrapper that we've never used, a vitola that we've never used, and used a lot of that first generation Cuban seed in the blend. It's an undisclosed blend officially. I'll tell you something on this show, though, that it was really important to me to incorporate some tobacco from Pennsylvania. And the reason is my entire family's from Pennsylvania. I grew up in Maryland, but my grandparents, I'd spent a lot of time in Pennsylvania, just really wanted to do something special with Pennsylvania tobacco. So there is some of that blended into the core. So it's got some Ligero in it, but it's really a medium cigar with a lot of flavor coming from that Pennsylvania filler and also that first generation Cuban seed.
Very nice. Smoke is slightly gritty but light. It's got a really good draw from it. Now, Richard's over here either being honest or talking smack, I don't know, but he says let's see here, where was that? Says that this stands for Greg motherfucker free. Is that true?
So the real story is that, yeah, somebody in my life called me that by accident, I think, and I kept throwing it back at them. And at some point I decided, you know what, I'm just going to name a cigar Greg motherfucking free. So that's the background for the name. Professionally, it's Good Morning Fortaleza fans. We were at the event. So we were at the event at B&G's, and they came up with some very creative uses for GMFF. I think Good Morning Fuckface was one of them, and some of them I can't even say even on the internet. I think it's illegal. Another one was Get My Free Fortaleza, because it's only an event exclusive. You can't get it any other way. So it can really mean whatever you'd like it to mean. But at its heart, it was Greg motherfucking free.
Nice. You have actually a pretty full lineup of cigars. This is not your first. This isn't even your second. This is even your third or your fourth. You've got quite a bit. So let me do this here while I load up the other page. Just to show everybody, Greg's pretty avid at this. I mean, my gosh, the guy's got a whole, and I say it like this, Greg, because it's always boggling to me how many brands people never hear of, and how many brands people put their heart, soul, and life into, and do all this work, but nobody realizes either who they are, where they are, how to find them. So I commend you, man. You've been very busy at work. Um, let's go through here on your list now. This is just your website, all right. But let's go ahead. Let's start with your first release. And I don't know which ones you've all sent me. I've got the Bodacious Maduro. So let's start with that one.
So that was the very first release. So we named that cigar after the most famous rodeo bull that I could think of. I grew up, my dad was a horse trader, grew up on a horse farm, worked on dairy farms. I was in the Future Farmers of America, and I rode in the local rodeo. So I never rode in the national rodeos, never even saw Bodacious personally, but that bull's famous for killing a guy. And since our logo was a bull, I thought, well, this is perfect. We'll just name it Bodacious. The factory in El Hoyito in the Dominican Republic, I told them the kind of cigar I was trying to create. The master blender created a number of blends for us to try. Actually, it was 12 different blends. There were 12 of us in a room smoking these over a couple days, and 11 out of 12 people selected the final Habano version of the Bodacious. I was the 12th person. It wasn't my favorite out of the 12 because I liked one that had an Ecuadorian Maduro wrapper on it. So we decided to release it in 2 wrappers, 3 Vitolas, give us 6 facings as a new company so we had some shelf presence. And it's still in our lineup. It's just a great expression of Dominican tobacco. It's all Dominican filler and binder, and then those 2 different wrapper choices. So it's done really well for us, and it'll always be my baby.
Well, the first one usually is. So let's see here. Now, next up on mine, just because you said Ecuadorian Connecticut earlier, right? No, you said
Ecuadorian Maduro, Ecuadorian Habano.
Habano. So let's go ahead and start with the Ecuadorian Connecticut one, which is this is the other one that you were so kind to send over to me, which is called.
Yeah. So the Sun Country was the second cigar that I blended myself. We had been in the warehouse all day. We've been testing tobacco off the pilons, and we went down to sit at lunch, and it's a group of Spanish-speaking, Dominican nationals, and we're sitting at lunch, and my my ex-wife at the time was from Panama, so I knew all the bad words in Spanish, and I described the blend to the factory, and so I've got the master blender, the factory owner, the head of operations on the floor, the son of the owner, and they're all sitting there. And after I described this blend, they have a sidebar, and in the sidebar, they said some not so nice things about me. He's an idiot. He's going to be out of business in 6 months. This will never sell. It's blasphemous to put a full body core in a mild cigar. And I said, look, I hear what you're saying. Let's just go back to the rolling room. Let's roll some of these and we'll taste them. So we rolled them, and very first roll was exactly what I intended it to be. We didn't change the blend really at all from that very first blend. They weren't convinced, and I had them send me home with 150 sticks so that we could test them over time. I really liked them. I placed an order. They said, are you sure you want that many of them? And I'm like, yep, I'm sure. And it's our top seller still today. It's our #1 seller because it's got a full body core. You've got all that flavor. You've got full strength and nicotine because it's all hiding under that Connecticut wrapper. And the Connecticut wrapper makes it smoke like a medium. So you've got this unique and complex smoking experience where you've got the full-bodied flavor of double Dominican Ligero. You have a leaf of Mexican San Andres blended into the filler. And then you've got a Dominican binder in that Ecuadorian Connecticut wrapper. So you, in the first quarter to a half an inch, you're going to taste that Connecticut. I'm not a huge Connecticut fan. After that, you're going to get into the core, and that mild wrapper is going to keep it from punching you. And instead, you're just going to taste all that great, overwhelming flavor.
I am a big. I'm very much like you. I am not a big Connecticut guy. I know people that for some reason smoke in reverse. They start their day at high horsepower, and then they end their day with like a Connecticut, which to me is it's kind of like drinking all day on Jack Daniels and then having a beer at the end of the night. It just doesn't make sense to me. The beer's to calm your nerves, I guess. I don't know. So I like you. I am only usually drinking a Connecticut or drinking a Connecticut or smoking a Connecticut when I'm drinking coffee.
Hmm.
I don't really have any other massive taste for Connecticut outside of that. Um, I like the Ecuadorian Connecticut if I'm gonna have a Connecticut, even in the afternoon, because at least I know I'm getting oomph out of it, and
Hmm.
that's really what you're going for. You're a man after my own heart, Greg. I am a high horsepower. I will smoke, the strongest cigar in my humidor, regardless of time. So I appreciate the Ecuadorian side of it because it does. It produces that little bit more of that pepperiness to it, a little bit more of that body, that strength, and everybody. Man, you get a good jolt of a nice pepper hit through the nose in the morning, and nothing that wakes you up. It's like smelling salts for cigar smokers. Like it's great. Um, okay, so moving on here, we have the Midnight Bender. All right, so that one
You got to scroll up. It's right before the
is
Sun
right
Country.
here.
There you go. So the Midnight Bender was the first cigar I blended myself, and I had a very similar conversation with the factory. They said it was too strong, no one would smoke it. And keep in mind that this is a cigar factory that's been around since the 70s, has only produced for the Dominican market, which is a very inherently mild market. I mean, Dominican Spolado Cubano is a mild tobacco. So when I created this blend at lunch, in my head, I'm like, I want double Lajero, I want a San Andres wrapper, I want Dominican filler and binder. They said it was too strong, it would never sell. In the end, it's still our second best selling cigar. It's a nice medium full expression. There's a lot of Dominican flavor, but really that was our first use of, was our second use of San Andres, but combining it with Lajero. So it's a medium full cigar. It's tied for the strongest cigar in our lineup, but it doesn't get to that full body where it's just really knocking you out. So you get a chance to taste those flavors. Even though San Andres kind of carries the day in flavor for this blend, you still have that Dominican floral and field kind of in the background, just kind of adding some essence to the strength of that wrapper tobacco.
I am a huge San Andreas smoker. I love them. It's definitely one of my favorite wrappers next to Cameroon. I know it's weird. I'm not a huge ultra light smoker, but I do like a really good Cameroon wrapper. Um, okay, so this is awesome. I love this little introduction. I hope this is okay that we're kind of going through this. I like to
Yeah.
kind of make sure everybody's introduced to the brand, let them know that there's there's a hell of a selection out there from this company. So you've got, from what I can tell, you've got something almost literally for almost everybody's palates, unless they're exclusively looking for ultra mild. But even at that, grow a pair, smoke a medium to mild, mild to medium, or medium to full. Branch out. If all you smoke is mild, please do yourself a favor. Branch out.
Yeah, I agree completely. And I'll tell you that if I'm at an event and there's a new smoker that's really never smoked, like they're there with somebody else, and they say, can you recommend a cigar for me? I will never give them the Avalanche. I don't want people to start at the mild range. I think at the mild range, some people just get stuck there and they don't really get to experience the essence of a nice medium cigar with all that flavor. So I start them off with a medium. If it scares them away, that's on them. But there are plenty of medium cigars that give you a great smoking experience that don't scare away a new smoker, and then they don't get stuck in that mold of, oh, I'm only going to smoke mild Connecticut's, and they never go outside of that. I was that smoker in 1992 till 95, where I only smoked Baccarats and, you know, sugar dip tip, Connecticut wrapper, mild cigar. I didn't know there was anything else. And I felt trapped. I didn't even, until I went into a real cigar store and saw what was in there, worked with a real tobacconist and said, hey, I've been smoking these for 3 years. What do you recommend? And he opened my palate up, you know, very fortunately, because it's been a great ride since then.
Well, you seem to be doing well. Like I said, you've got a really good lineup. My uncle primarily smokes Baccarats, and there's nothing wrong with that. Listen, everybody, smoke what you like what you smoke as often as you can. That's really the core theme throughout all of this. But you know, just because you like tacos doesn't mean you got to go to the same taco stand. Branch out, go to a different taco stand, go to a different restaurant. So I encourage everybody for 2025, if you haven't already, branch out inside of your cigars and give
Fortaleza Libre.
Fortaleza Libre. Sorry, I'm as gringo as they come, man. I can't pronounce really much of anything. So Fortaleza y Libre Cigars. Now we've got one last one that you had sent over to me. This one looks pretty. Let's see, what is it? This one looks like it's maybe a pretty stout one.
The Intimidador.
It's the Veneto.
Segundo Viento.
Yeah, I
So
don't
that's
see
the
that
second.
one.
That's the second win. That was our second anniversary cigar.
Oh, okay. I don't see it on your website.
It should be hiding on there somewhere. If you can't find it, I can certainly describe it. But so Segundo Viento was our second anniversary stick. It's a medium cigar through the first 2/3, and then it's a medium full at the end. It's got an Ecuadorian Habano wrapper, and it's got a couple leaves of Lajero in the core, but it's a box press. And the great story about that box press is, you know, it's not a big part of the market. I wouldn't recommend that a new company come out with a box press. But we did it because once we settled on that blend, and just like every other blend, we start going up and down in ring gauge, and then we start trying it with different vitolas to kind of see where that blend speaks the loudest. And that blend just worked really well in a box press. So it wasn't our intention to go that direction, but the blend just told us that's what we should do. So we came out with it in a box press and a skinny Toro and a kind of a fat Robusto. And it's one of I carry those in my box all the time. It's just a great cigar for kind of any environment because it's a nice medium blend, but it's got that great transition in the final third that our other cigars don't have. And it's because of the way that box press is burning and a lot of the heat's going through the gaps in the corners where you have less tobacco. So the core of it's a little bit cooler and it's capturing a lot more tar and nicotine in the filler as you get to that final third. And then when you get there, now it's burning. So now you're going to start tasting that all of that strength that's coming from the Lajero in that final third kicks it up to a nice medium full. And it basically transitions you to like your next cigar should be the Intimidador or the Midnight Bender because you're already there.
Well, I got to apologize, Greg. This is how little Spanish. This is just how little of any language. It could have been German for all I know. I didn't realize that stood for second wind. I was literally looking for the word, the two words on the wrapper. I wasn't looking for the thing itself. So for everybody, this cigar is called Second Wind on their website. All right, have a good laugh at my expense. It's okay. For any of you guys that watch my unboxings know that I just can't pronounce anything. And that's totally fine. So I apologize for that.
So no need to apologize. You know, I talked about happy mistakes earlier, and we work with a band company in the Dominican Republic. There's obviously an English-Spanish translation issue as we work with the factory. I'm learning more Spanish. My GPS is set to Spanish just so I can learn all the numbers. I'm doing the best I can, but I was raised on a farm in Maryland, raising horses. I wasn't out there speaking other languages, and it's new to me. But Second Wind was presented to the band factory, spelled out as Second Wind. And when they created the band artwork, it came back as Segundo Viento. And I was like, well, that's pretty cool. None of our cigars are in Spanish. We'll leave it Segundo Viento. So I send the band artwork to the box factory to make the boxes, and then they translated it back to Second Wind. So the boxes say Second Wind, and I was like, oh, well, that's pretty cool too, because now everyone knows what it means in English. So our boxes are Second Wind, and we've left it that way for almost 4 years now. The bands are Segundo Viento, the boxes are Second Wind.
Oh, okay. Awesome. That I'm actually glad you explained that, because that might have kind of confused a few people if they weren't necessarily paying attention.
Mm-hmm.
So let's see. All right. Before we kind of dive into a little bit, I found an article I wanted to touch on Cigar Coop that I'm just curious about. But before we do, are you going to PCA this year? Are people going to be able to find you if they're going to go?
Yes. Yeah, so at PCA, the thing we're going to release is not a new cigar, but we're going to be releasing a sampler pack, which we haven't had before. I think that's going to interest a lot of shops that haven't carried our cigars. It's kind of a great entry point for a new shop to bring us in. Customers buy a sampler, they try 5 of our cigars, they'll have an opportunity to let the shop know, hey, I really like this one. I wish you would carry this one, and give us a little bit more exposure. So that sampler pack, we just got these in to the country. So this will be what we're going to release at PCA, is just the opportunity to buy, 5 of our top selling blends, and we'll get them in the store. So we're really proud of this. It's a step for a small company to get to the point where you're creating different marketing materials and different packaging. And it's something that we're pretty excited to release at PCA.
It's also a gamble and a risk, because you've got that's the one thing I always enjoy talking with people about inside the cigar world, that I just don't think a lot of people understand. I try to make it a point not to ask for cigars. I didn't start this show because I want people to send me anything. I started it because I was bored, and it just kind of turned into what it's turned into, and I'm very grateful for it, and it's awesome, and I'm having so much fun with it. Um, but all of this is upfront cash. All of this is upfront. Something like PCA could cost you tens of thousands of dollars, and you've got to close deals. You've got to close accounts on that. So when you're kind of starting all of this, how much of it was like, "Oh, I'm just going to buy everything I can, make this work," or were you timid and kind of really made sure you were in the right places that you needed to be?
So when I started, I had a full-time job. I worked in government contracting. I live right near Washington, D.C. It's the armpit of America, to be honest. It's really expensive here. The traffic's horrible. The people aren't nice. But this is where my family and my job at the time drew me. So I really wanted to start a cigar company just as a passion project. I did set money aside. The intent was to really invest in it and grow the company. 2 years in, I realized, and this is during COVID, horrible time to start a company, but I kind of took a break for a year, and then I realized the only way to grow this company was to go full time. So, you take that risk, you take that leap, and you gotta spend the money that you set aside for this. And the reality is, it took 3 times more money than I had set aside. The company is actually starting to repay those loans to me, but that's 5 years in. I mean, we're almost 6 years in. And they say the average point of profit in a cigar company is 5 years. So you really got to get in there for the long haul, which is why you see a lot of small companies that come out with fantastic cigars, but they don't have the cash flow or the drive or the passion, or they didn't do it right, and then they're gone. I mean, and a lot of Virginia brands, fantastic stuff, and then they're gone. So it's not an easy business. If you have the passion, and you can manage the cash flow and you can do those expensive things that are required, then you can make it happen. But it was hard. I mean, there were times where the government is just pounding down on us with FDA regulations and pre-market testing and tobacco import, all the different monthly reports you've got to submit. It's a mess. Like, all I wanted to do was produce great cigars and give them to great people and sit in lounges, and you realize it's not about that. It's like all of these other things, like really running a business, and it makes it complicated. So yeah, it's expensive to go to PCA. It's $10,000 minimum to go, and it's, you got to sell, you got to make money. My first year was 3 years ago, and they say your first year you won't even break even. We actually sold enough cigars to pay for the event. Not enough profit, but enough cigars, enough revenue. And then the second year, we sold enough that the profit covered the event. So this will be our third year. The hope is that with our brand exposure, this will be our year. This is, fifth year. This is when people start talking about that new brand that no one's ever heard of, that 5-year mark. So we're at the 5-year mark. We think PCA is going to be great for us, and we're really looking forward to it.
Well, I mean, you're right. The average company usually doesn't make it 5 years. And if they have, they've done something right. And that's usually a turning point. As somebody that does business consulting and software consulting for my real job, I can tell you that you're not wrong in that. You survive 5 years, that's your first big business milestone. You should be profitable at that point. Unless you're Tesla, then you could just run negative for 15 years and become almost a trillionaire. But it's neither here nor there. So Bruce was wondering, when you held up that 5-pack, you didn't say what cigars were in that sampler. Can you let everybody know what cigars are in that sampler?
So we haven't actually defined it. I have a visit to the factory in February, and we're going to, the sampler bag should have arrived. We've got Boveda providing us with the humidification for those, which is great for us. And we're going to talk to the factory about what's going to go in there. The Sun Country is a definite. The Midnight Bender is a definite. The Intimidador is a definite. And then the other two, it won't be the GMFF because you can only get that in events. But it will, I'm guessing the Second Wind will be in there. And then I think the Bodacious, because that's our first cigar, that's our baby. So it's either Bodacious and Second Wind, or it's Bodacious and Bushwhacker as the first two lines. We haven't had to get rid of a line. All the lines sell well, but we also don't release a new line every 6 months. We're almost 6 years in. We got 7 lines, so we're not in a big rush to come out with a new cigar. It's the blends that we try that tell us when it's time to release. The Avalanche took 2 years to release. I couldn't find a mild I could smoke. And some of them, it's an instant thing, like Sun Country. That blend worked perfect from the start. And then it was just about rolling and resting and banding and getting them out to the market. So we're not in a big rush. We don't want to have 100 lines. I love the Padron model where they do a few things really, really well. You don't see a bunch of new Padrones coming out. And it's because they've set a model where as long as we've covered the bases on kind of everyone's palate in the market, we don't need to do a lot more. And so our next line will be a true full. It's going to punch you in the face. We haven't settled on that blend yet, and we're going to the factory to test some new ones, and we'll release it when it's time. So it's no rush. I appreciate you saying we've got a great lineup for a 5-year-old company, but some 5-year-old companies would have 15 or 20 lines. We're just not into that buzz of just coming out with a new line for the sake of coming out with a new line. It's all about adding value to the lineup, adding value to the customer, and us growing just incrementally over time.
Yeah, but that's why you have a great lineup, because you're staying within your wheelhouse of of what you're trying to achieve, and you're not just spitting out whatever that comes across your desk or your mind. I mean, if you look at it, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You have 6 blends on your website in 5 years. That's a blend a year. That's a little over a blend a year. And you've grown it and you've taken the time for it. I don't think somebody has a great lineup because they've got 20 lines. I mean, I'll be honest with you. Most of the big boys that have that many lines, I feel, lose a lot because tobacco could only. I have a hard time sometimes thinking that a lot of these are different blends when you just
Yeah,
have
for me,
100
so
lines.
yeah, I won't mention any brands, but you're right. There are some brands that, in the 90s and the 2000s, I was very, very fond of what they were doing. But it got to the point where so many things were released that the stores couldn't carry everything. So they would push out some stuff, and that might have been my favorite thing. And then I didn't know what I liked within that line. So I don't really want my lines to get so complex and diverse that the shops aren't going to carry a nice exposure of the brand. To me, it's I look at Perdomo as another P cigar. It's a Padron, and now we're Perdomo. Perdomo, you see them in a shop, and they're for the most part, it's primarily 7 or 8 lines, and then there's 5 facings in each line. So they have a nice presence in a lounge. They do a great job at marketing. And I love the way when you walk into a cigar humidor and you see them, they're all in one spot. They all look the same, very consistent. And they haven't gone to the point where there's 1,000 different kinds. They're really methodical in their approach about what they release, and I like that about that brand too. And I mean, I'll talk about all the brands that I like because I follow them. I'm smoking their cigars. I want to see what's out there, and the people that have been successful, I'm happy to ride their coattails, just as happy as I am for someone else to ride mine.
And that's kind of the fun of the cigar industry too, is everybody does kind of help everybody. There's brands out there that, I mean, it's crazy to think, at one point in time, Apple wasn't going to exist without Microsoft giving them money. I don't think you would find that today with any industry, but you do see that type of help and that type of familial connection within tobacco companies and cigar manufacturers. I mean, with the fires that happened in the DR this year, everybody was just itching to hand over help and stuff like that. So that's one of the nice things about the cigar industry. At least that's been my experience, kind of peeking behind Oz's curtain for the last 4 years.
It's remarkable, Ryan. Being in government contracting, which is very cutthroat, and working for great government contractors and billion-dollar companies, just nobody would ever share the details that you see in the cigar industry. I've before I even had a brand, I had other manufacturers show me their wholesale price sheets. I had other manufacturers tell me where the best deals on tobacco were. I had other manufacturers refer me to factories, to box companies, to the people that make their bands. And it's unheard of. It really is a familial culture that exists not just in the people sitting in a lounge smoking your cigars, but all the way back to the people that own the companies. Omar with Fortaleza Cigars, Virginia-based company, great resource for me. Tobacconists, my local cigar tobacconist, Brett Fry at Tobaccology, just another great resource to me. And everyone is, for the most part, 95%, not everyone, 95% are very willing to help you because they realize you sell more cigars, I'm going to sell more cigars. We want to build the culture. We want to grow the culture. We want more people enjoying this culture. And the more people that are selling more cigars, the more we'll all be able to do that collectively.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean, and it's very true. And the more that we'll be able to continue to enjoy this hobby that it seems like everybody's trying to just take away from us.
Yep. And yet imports have gone up year over year for the last 3 years. So we're doing great. There's more smokers. The culture is growing. The demographic of women smokers is increasing dramatically. The demographics of either immigrant and or African-American smokers growing dramatically. The culture is it's welcoming to anybody. Honestly, anybody that wants to enjoy a cigar with me, I don't care who you are, just come and enjoy a smoke. As long as you're enjoying the cigar, mine or somebody else's, we're going to get along. I mean, I have this theory that 1 out of 40 people in the general world I can't stand, but in the cigar smoking community, it's more like 1 out of 200 I can't stand. It's just a very special group of people. Like, for the most part, we all have that same mentality. We share a vice, we know how to relax, we know how to enjoy something, and we're willing to sit down for an hour and a half and do it.
Mm-hmm. No, you're incredibly right. Um, we have a question here. So I always ask this question. I'm the guy that actually buys boxes of Lanceros. Are we gonna see one on the horizon?
So, like the box press, I didn't intend to come out with one because a lot of people just don't smoke them. They don't like the mouth feel. They don't they don't understand the way that the burn operates. They just don't appreciate a nice box press. And I wouldn't have come out with one as a new company because they don't sell as well as a Toro. Toro is the #1 seller. A Toro Ferrejo, that's it. So Lancero is the same thing. Like there's a group of people that Lanceros is all they want. I love a good Lancero. My favorite Lancero is the 12 Honest Men. I don't even know if they make it anymore. I have some great memories with it, my son and I smoking those cigars. And I love a good Lancero. Lanceros are inherently hard to roll. As a new company, you don't want to have burn issues. You don't want to have, things that turn people off from the very beginning. A Lancero will come out, but we haven't figured out what blend it's going to come out in, or if it'll be a totally unique blend.
Okay. Okay. Do we get to know within the next 2 years? Obviously, probably not 2025.
I would say within the next 2 years, maybe the next 18 months. We've got a few that are resting now. Part of the issue is, I really want it to be, I want obviously the wrapper is going to speak, right? So you've got to have a great wrapper that's going to carry the load, but also that's going to give you great burnability. So, you work with San Andres, it's an inherently difficult wrapper to get great burnability. You have to have a nice binder that gets real hot, a Matafina. We like to work with Dominican binders, which don't burn as hot. So we're testing some different fermentation on those binders, and some different leaves and some different primings to get that heat that's required. So right now what we're focused on is the Midnight Bender in a Lancero, but we're going to start trying the Sun Country in a Lancero and see if we can get the burnability we need there.
Okay. Nice. Yeah, that's the hardest part of a Lancero is also getting people to learn how to smoke the damn thing the right way.
Yeah.
Most of the time, people just put it this way. I don't give Lanceros to friends that aren't cigar smokers, because they'll finish it in 30 minutes. And they're like, "Oh, it's tasting like trash. My tongue is numb. I can't even feel my mouth." It's like, dude, it's not a forest fire. Like you're not supposed to just chong it. It's not a cigarette. And that's also, I think, why a lot of people don't appreciate Lanceros is they look at it more as a cigarette, and they're supposed to smoke faster instead of just sitting back and enjoying. My favorite sizes is 48 to 38. Those are my Vitola preferences for ring gauge. So as we're kind of coming in here, want to kind of show off some of the stuff you had sent over to me. So you were so super kind to send my bald ass a really nice, comfortable, warm hat. I live here in Colorado, so that will be used. And you've got a lot of fun stuff. I mean, I've never seen this before from a company.
An air freshener.
Yeah. Is it because you want people to smoke these in your car and that's the air freshener for the car?
Well, yeah, and you're going to see the brand every time you hop in the car. You're headed to the cigar shop and you're like, oh yeah, I need some more of those Fortaleza Libre. So, and it's fun. We're going through a name change. We were Fuerte Libre, now we're Fortaleza Libre. So we've still got some stuff that has Fuerte on it. Some of our lines still say Fuerte, but as we transition, we're not going to throw stuff out. So we're going to our cigar bands, when we run out of bands for Sun Country, which we just did, the new ones will come out with Fortaleza. The Intimidador started with Fortaleza. The Avalanche will get the new Fortaleza brand name on it. So it's just a function of we're doing this gradual transition. So your hat probably says Fuerte, but your shirt says Fortaleza. I knew you were in Colorado, and I wasn't sure the T-shirt would fit, so I wanted to make sure you had something.
Oh, Fat Man Double XL is kind of the industry standard for cigar smokers. It's the first shirt that goes out at every event. And so yeah, I have I have a better than average cigar smoker build. But so what you're saying is this is now a collector's item.
Oh yeah,
Does
absolutely. Yeah, it's a
Richard
collector's
have
item.
one?
What's that?
Does Richard have one?
Well, I don't know if Richard's got one or not. Honestly, he
Awesome. He
should.
doesn't get one. Haha, Richard, I got one. Maybe I know a guy, Richard, though. You might be able to get one if you ask nicely. I'll put in a good word for you. But I wanted to actually, I'm glad you brought that up because I wanted to actually talk to you about that. Your name change happened, or your name change announcement was literally February of last year, and you've been working through. So we're now a year later. If it's okay, and I don't know what your rules are and anything, but tell everybody what happened with the name change and kind of it doesn't seem like there was any legal issues that you guys just kind of said we're not going to fight this fight and just decided to change it. Is that correct?
No, so there was a the way trade. First of all, I got a $25,000 trademark law education. It was very expensive. I didn't know enough. That'll be a rare keepsake because that's got Fuerte on it. So I I didn't know enough about trademark law. I didn't know anything about it. There's so many things you get into a new business, you just don't know. I didn't know how to blend cigars. There's so many things I didn't. I still say I know about 55% of what I need to know to be a brand owner. I learn new stuff every day. I'll learn stuff on this show, but I just didn't know. So I did a search for Fuerte Libre. Nothing came up. You can't file for your trademark until you have the product in commerce. That was my understanding. It turns out you can actually file pre-release, but I didn't know that. So I filed after I started the business, and then COVID hit, and PTO, all of their applications got slowed down. So we were quite a ways into using Fuerte when we finally got to the public posting period within the trademark process. And I was going to say Fuente opposed the trademark because of the word Fuerte. So, and that's what they're legally required to police their trademark, or they could lose their own trademark. So they opposed it. We negotiated over a long period of time. After 8 months and $25,000 of fighting, and I thought I could win, and of course they thought they could win. But ultimately, I didn't have the pockets to support a continued litigation over the next, another 8 months. It would have been another $30,000, and it didn't make sense. So we came up with an agreeable settlement. They gave me 5 years to change my name. No company wants to take that long. I won't take that long. But as a small company, I didn't want to throw out bands that I had. I mean, you're ordering bands in 10,000 band lots, and you're ordering boxes in 100 box lots, and you've got your swag in 1,000 piece lots. So we didn't want to throw anything away. And we got a really good opportunity to take the next 5 years and transition. So we're in that phase now where we're transitioning. Carlito and I have had great conversations since then. He's a big supporter of the boutique cigar industry. And I'm happy that it's past us and that it hasn't affected our relationship. And we're just going to move forward. He wants us to be successful as much as we do. And we'll just be kind of an important part of the industry. These small brands. I mean, think about it. Every big brand was a boutique, and so we're that boutique now. And eventually, we'll be a big brand, and we'll be put in the same position they were.
Well, I will say it was nice that they didn't sit there and tell you to stay up all night and change it in a week. That the 5 year plan, that's at least. Now I will say, and this is coming from me, I think it's a little ridiculous. Uh, Fuerte and Fuente are not the same name. Um, I like Carlito. His sister's amazing. I it's crazy to me that any company, I don't care who you are, can take something that's not their name and have issue with it. That's me personally. However, I'm really glad it wasn't a crazy litigation issue, and it wasn't a company ending issue. So, but like I said, I think it's not like it was Fuente Libre Cigars. Like I don't know. That's me. I'm sure we probably can't go into it any more than that, but that's just what my opinion is. But it's nice to know that he's supporting you and there's no hard feelings. And again, speaks to the industry and the camaraderie and the brotherhood in the industry.
Yeah, and I think that, just to, anyone that's thinking of starting a cigar brand, to give you an idea, attorneys are my second biggest expense. So it's not an easy business. I mean, there's a lot of money that's, just paid out to people to handle the process that you're not familiar with, and the best leaders, they know their weaknesses, and you pay people to do those things. So I've got great attorneys. I'm very confident in what they're doing. And they fight the good fight, but it costs money. So, when you start your brand, you're just blind to all of these realities of not just the cigar industry, but just business in general. And if you've never been exposed to it, it can be a real shock. So, I reach my hand out to anybody that needs help and offer advice to anybody that wants trademark advice or a good attorney. And I'm there for you.
Well, you got a valuable lesson, and I say valuable because one of the things that I love talking about with just owners, company owners, are the trials and the tribulations, are the issues, because quite frankly, if you've never had an issue as a company, one, you're probably fucking lying. But if you've never had an issue as a company, then you're not a tried and tested company. You're just a company that's existing without anybody bitching about you. Um, and when you're going through and trying to build it, it's in the moments where you want to give up. It's in the moments where you're just fuck everything to hell and I'm just angry. You know, it's those moments that make the company a company. It's those moments that test you as an owner to your own personal resolve in dealing with the company and the issues. Would you agree?
Well, I mean, smooth seas don't make a great captain. You have to go through those things. You have to experience them.
That's what
And,
I haven't
another,
heard before.
I talked about Omar de Frias at Fratello. He would answer any question I had, but the big flaw in that arrangement was I didn't know what questions to ask. You don't know what you're going to be confronted with. So you got to have to live through it yourself, and then, use your great friends like him as a backup, when you have those questions. But, in the end, you've got to go through it and you'll be a better captain.
And I've never heard the smooth seas don't produce. What'd you say?
Great captains.
I've never heard that one before. I like that one. I like that. I like so outside of the whole Fuente thing, which I'm sure had bad blood between you in the beginning. Now you're over it, which is awesome. Everybody love everybody, like Will Ferrell says in Semi Pro. Um, what has been outside of this the biggest obstacle in running this company over the last 5 years?
Money is the biggest obstacle. Like, you don't realize in the beginning, to grow any kind of a company, you've got to be reinvesting all the money, so you're bringing in cash. People think that you're loaded, you're a brand owner, you got all this cash, and it takes a lot of money. So you got to be able to manage that stress of, getting to the point of profitability. You've got to put aside enough money in the beginning to make it happen. I spent money I shouldn't have had to because I didn't know better. Like, until you learn the industry, do you really know what the next step's going to be? Do you know the impact of having your own tobacco import permit? Do you know all of the paperwork in the background? And I've made some changes to relieve me of some of the pressures of those things just by learning. And again, I know 55%. Hopefully at the end of the show, I'll know 56% of what I need to know. Because until it hits you, you're wasting money. You're just throwing it away and you're wasting time. And as a small brand, my face is the best thing that sells this brand. I've got to be out there. I've got to be in front of customers. But if I'm dealing with paperwork, I can't be in Ohio. I can't be in Dallas, Texas. I can't be in Florida. I can't be anywhere if I'm doing all those things myself. So it's an education, but you got to have the money to do it.
What did you do? And forgive me if you said this, I didn't catch it. What did you do prior to cigars? I know you said government contracting, but have you always been inside of that government contracting world?
No, so I left the farm when I was 18 to go to University of Maryland to get a degree in horticulture because I knew I was going to be a farmer. Gosh darn it, I grew up on a farm. I didn't want to deal with these scoops. I wanted to raise cattle and horses, and in the end, I needed health insurance in college, so I went to work for Giant Food, a local grocery store. I went in the management training program, did that for 10 years, had a daughter. Didn't want to work weekends anymore because, of course, retail, you got to work weekends to make the money. I had a great interview with Jerry Tuttle, a former Navy admiral, who interviewed me in 7 minutes with 7 questions. And he said, "I think you'd make a great recruiter, don't you?" And I said, "Well, absolutely, Admiral." And he asked the chief of staff that was in the building, "Don't you think so?" And she said, "Yes." And he asked the recruiter, and he said, "Absolutely, Admiral." And he said, "Can you start Monday?" And I said, I need to give 2 weeks notice. And so I gave 2 weeks notice. And so I started in recruiting, and I didn't even know what a recruiter was. I just said, absolutely, not even knowing what they do. Basically people that hire people, you interview and you hire.
Headhunter.
And so he was my greatest mentor ever. He's the one that gave me the quote about the captain, smooth seas don't make great captains. Anytime I had a problem, he'd throw that quote out at me. And I learned so much in that business and grew, from a recruiter to a director to a senior vice president over multiple departments, but always on the people side of the business. Because my dad, being a horse trader, bought and sold horses, and it was all about those face-to-face relationships. He said, never put someone in the wrong saddle. If you sell someone a horse that's not for them, they're never going to buy another horse from you. So that's the kind of thing that I do now in the cigar business. Just follow that model of never putting someone in the wrong saddle. Speak to your audience, figure out who they are. Don't tell them who you are. You've got to get to the base of, what do you smoke? What do you like? Why do you like it? What's your favorite drink? Go through and it's important to me. I don't want to put someone in the wrong saddle. And I've followed that model from the very beginning.
So what was the very first cigar you ever smoked? Do you remember it?
Yeah, the Baccarat.
That was literally no gas station cigar before that. You went right to the sweet tip Connecticut Baccarats.
So I bought a house in a brand new community that was next to a protected wetlands in Frederick, Maryland. And I thought protected wetlands sounded really fantastic. It turns out it's just another word for swamp. And in the summer, there were mosquitoes everywhere. And my neighbor's like, "Man, you put a hot tub out there, you got a flagstone patio, and you're never outside. What's going on?" I'm like, these mosquitoes are just killing me. I'll sit in my hot tub in the winter, but I'm not going to sit out here in the summer and get bit by mosquitoes. And he goes, "You should smoke cigars." And I said, "Well, why would I do that?" And he said, "Well, they'll keep the mosquitoes away." And I go, "Really?" He goes, "Yeah, why don't you come over tomorrow? We'll smoke a cigar." So he gave me a Baccarat. And so for 3 years, the only cigars I smoked were the ones he handed me. He handed me a Baccarat because that's what he smoked. And I, we would be outside all the time smoking Baccarats. I'd smoke one mowing the lawn. I'd smoke one working in the garden. And then he went on vacation. The jerk didn't leave me any Baccarats, so I had to go to a cigar store.
Your dealer left.
Yeah, my dealer. Yeah, the first 100 are free. But I mean, I brought the bourbon, so it was a fair trade. But if he hadn't gone on vacation, we wouldn't be having this show. I never would have grown outside of Baccarats. I would have just smoked those cigars for the rest of my life.
So I don't know if you said the cigar you went to after Baccarat.
So, I went to a great tobacconist. The shop's called Davidas. They're a chain in Maryland. They have a great reputation. And this was when they were much smaller. This was in 95, I guess. I went to one in Frederick, right down the street from my house. And I went and I said, I've only been smoking Baccarats. And I said, do you have anything? I said, do you have any Baccarats? And he goes, don't you want to try something else? I'm like, do you have anything else? And he's like, follow me. And I go into this room. I'd never been in a humidor. Open the door and it just smells of, tobacco, just raw tobacco, just amazing smell.
Oh.
And he said, he asked me what my price point was, what I was comfortable spending, when I was going to be smoking the cigars, how much smoke time did I want? All these questions I'd never really considered, but I knew the answers to. I knew what I wanted to do. And he said, I'm going to sell you 5 cigars and you save the bands of the 2 that are your favorite and bring them back to me. So I smoked 5 cigars, brought him back the 2 bands, and he gave me 5 different cigars. So I don't know what the cigar was I smoked right after Baccarat, but I do remember I fell into loving Fonseca.
Okay. The original Fonseca.
Yeah, the original. And then probably another 5 years later, I fell into Tarano.
Okay.
Because I went into the same shop and I said, I smoked a VSG. A friend of mine gave me one. I can't afford these every day. What do you got that's close? He gave me a Tarano Signature Maduro, I think. Smoked those for a while. Fell into Perdomo, the Habano Maduro Gordo.
So now we're in the mid to late 90s since you're in the Maduro,
so was this
Perdomo.
But I was always an across the board. I'm my own worst customer. I mean, I smoked everything. Like I never really, those are the highlights of the journey, but I still like smoked my way through the humidor. New stuff would come out. I'd try the new stuff. I just always was kind of my palate's very open. There was nothing I was just settled on. Even the Gordo phase, was like a 2 or 3 year phase for me, which was right before I started my own brand. And then I realized I don't want to smoke the same cigar for 2 hours anymore. Like I want to smoke 2 cigars in the same time. So I went to smaller ring gauges, smaller vitolas. I probably focused mostly on Toros at the time. It's amazing how we all kind of evolve. Our journey is different for each of us. And I appreciate all those journeys. It doesn't have to be the same one I follow, but again, my own worst customer. I do have people who are Fortaleza fans, tried and true, and that's all they smoke. Love those guys. They're the ones that are helping me to grow. I'm not one of those guys. I still, in my box that's next to me, I have other cigars. So, especially when I'm at home, when I'm wearing my logo, I'm always going to smoke my stuff if I'm out and about. But when I'm at home, I'm still smoking other stuff. I go to humidors all the time. And they're like, have you tried this new one? I'm like, nope, give me that. Because as a brand, it'd be like a chef never trying new food. You'd be isolating yourself to just your own experience. So you've got to try new stuff. And I'm following that same journey that started, in 95.
So what I'm hearing is your drug dealer neighbor left you and you had to go down to the corner store and get your fix from there. And then that kind of opened your whole world. And by the way, I'm kidding about your neighbor. It's just just tongue in cheek. From there, you kind of just exploded into the cigar world with a cannonball. How many cigars were you smoking once you figured out the world was bigger than Baccarat?
All of them.
You were smoking like every day at that point?
No, I would say that, the Baccarat experience was like once a week kind of thing. Hang out with your neighbor, have a cigar, great conversation, smoke a bourbon, maybe 2 cigars at the most at a time. And he smoked mostly Coronas. So, we're talking about
48
2 hours at the most, hanging out, drinking bourbon, going back to our wives. And now, typical, night here, I'll smoke 4 or 5. And when I'm out on the road, I'll smoke 7 or 8 in a day. Because, each shop you go, you smoke a cigar, hang out with customers. If you're doing an event, smoking cigars. I had a 5-hour event at B&G's in West Carrollton, Ohio. I guarantee you I smoked 6 cigars at that event. So it's, I love cigars. I mean, I'm not addicted, just like I haven't really I've met maybe one addicted cigar smoker. but I'm not it's just, I love the experience, you know, and one cigar always tastes like the next one. Like it's like one tequila is one too many and two is not enough. It's that same kind of thing. So, so you know, once I've had one, I'm like, oh man, I just want another one. And then once you've had another one, it's like, oh, well, I guess we're going to finish this bottle of bourbon.
I've already had 3. Why not have 10?
Mm-hmm.
You know, but I get it, right? Because I went down to Great Smoke, which, by the way, everybody, if you don't have your tickets left or yet, there are still some left. I think there's still some. I know there's virtual left, and I'm pretty sure there's still some general admission if you want to make your way down there. Definitely worth it. But I mean, my gosh, I went down there, and I don't think I'm exaggerating. I probably had 10 to 12 cigars that day. I mean, it was waking up at 8 o'clock, having a cigar before you ever even went, having another one in the parking lot 2 hours before it starts, and then they give you a cigar at the tailgate party. There's your third one before 11. And I mean, it just goes, and then you're about halfway through another one, and a buddy comes up to you and gives you another one. Next thing you know, you're 10, 12 in, and you're like, I don't even taste anything anymore. Where's the cheapest one I have in my bag? Because I just want to smoke, right? Um, I don't. I have a problem. Not a problem, but I take issue with people saying they're addicted to cigars. Less than 5% of nicotine is absorbed through your mouth. Um, I would very much ask them, are they inhaling any of that smoke? If so, fine, so be it. I know manufacturers that inhale the entire cigar. Like, that's awesome. That's iron lung right there. I couldn't do it. I was a cigarette smoker for 20 years. I inhaled a cigar on accident once, and I just stopped coughing a week ago. It's brutal. So I that's kind of the thing I take issue with why people say premium tobacco or premium cigars need to go away. The addiction of it is. What No kid that I know is going into a humidor and buying a cigar, like or trying to buy a cigar. No 16-year-olds walking into a lounge going, I wonder what this new Liga Privada, or I wonder what this new Liga number 9 is like, or whatever. And the average cigar smoker is 28. So I do, or the average starting cigar smoker is around 28. That's because you could afford golf clubs by the time you're 28, probably.
Yeah.
But so I always do take issue with that, with people saying that they become addicted to cigars. I mean, would you agree with me on that? I could smoke all week long and go 2 weeks without even thinking of one.
Yeah. I agree with you. I do agree with
Yes.
you. I did know a guy, probably 15 years ago, that used to go to Mardi Gras with us, and he would open up his humidor in the morning and talk to his cigars. And, you know, he had to smoke one when he first woke up. And I don't know that it was a nicotine addiction. It was a process addiction, but he
Yes,
was
it's
the only person
habitual.
that I thought, yeah, yeah. So he was just tied to the whole idea of, I've got to go do this. I think he still treasured the moment. Like, he wasn't just puffing it to get the nicotine. Like,
Mm,
he loved the experience. But I think it's just I'm trying to think of the word. It's therapeutic.
very.
But it's ritualistic. It's like pipe smokers. You know, it's a ritual. You know, it takes time. You know, you got to clean your cigar. Your pipe. You got to use the pipe cleaner. Yeah, and then you got to clear out the bowl, and then you got to tap it out, and you got to put the tobacco in, you got to pack it, and you got to light it, and then you take some puffs, and then you're managing that smoke. Cigars aren't quite as complicated, in my opinion, but it's still very ritualistic. You know, I look at it in the cello, I take it out of the cello, I'm looking at the cap, I check out the foot, I'm looking to see if I can define the tobacco inside, I take a cold draw. then I warm the foot, and then I'm smelling the smoke off the foot before I even pull it up to my mouth. And then I take that first draw and I'm like, oh, and then on the next draw, I'll do a retro. So it's, for me, it's therapeutic. It's this whole process that it's making me relax. It's making me focus on something other than the stresses of the world. And even that guy who smoked cigars all day long, I don't think he was addicted to nicotine. He was addicted to the process and how it removed him from the world.
Yeah, to your point, for anybody trying to understand addicted to the process and they just can't wrap their head around it, consider how you put your wallet and keys away every day. Do you put them in the same place every day? Do you put them away exactly the same way every day? If so, that is considered addicted to the process because you always know where they are. You put them in the same place. I'm that way. My ADD makes me that way. I'm addicted to the process of a lot of things. That's how I make it through. I had a buddy. I was a cigarette smoker for 20 years, and I have a buddy of mine that would wake up at 2 or 3 in the morning to have a cigarette and go back to bed. If a cigar smoker is waking up at 2 or 3 in the morning for the express purpose of smoking a cigar, okay, I will give them that they're probably addicted to it at that point. But if they're not, then it's the process. It's the, like you had said, it's the cut, it's the light, it's the smoke, it's the draw. And what I actually realized about myself with cigarettes, it wasn't that I was addicted to smoking cigarettes. I enjoyed smoking. I didn't necessarily need to inhale. I just enjoyed the act of pulling smoke in, enjoying it and blowing it out. And that's when I realized cigars were for me. Because you get so much flavor and so much depth inside of them. And, you see if you agree with me on this, but when people ask me how you get certain flavors out of a cigar, my first question to them is, how often do you smoke? If they tell me a couple times a year, then I'm going to tell them, my response to them is, find something you enjoy smoking and just smoke it. Don't try to go for flavors. And usually I get but I want to taste them. And I say, well, you guys smoke more. It's the same idea as wine or bourbon. If I give somebody a thing of bourbon and all they drink is mixed drinks, all they're going to taste is heat and burn. They're not going to taste anything. You've got to be able to hold it in your mouth, swish it around, know what you're tasting. Would you agree with me on that? If you're a couple time a year cigar smoker, don't go for flavor complexity, just go for a flavor profile?
Yeah, absolutely, because you're not going to pick up the complexity. But by the same token, if someone buys, at an event, you buy 4, you get 1 free, and they're like, "What's the first one I should smoke?" And I always ask, "Well, how many are you going to have tonight? You're going to have one? If you're going to have one, then I'm going to point them to my best cigar, like the #1 seller, and also based on their profile, like full strength or mild or whatever. But if you're going to have a couple, and you haven't had one today, I'm going to give them one of my most complex blends because they're a regular cigar smoker. Like, try the Intimidador or try the Sun Country. Like, those 2 blends are very complex. And you're going to lose some of that complexity if you start with something that's more full strength and you go back and try to experience the complexity, you're going to lose it. So, I think there's a lot to be said. People that don't really smoke cigars on a regular basis, just meet their strength or body profile. Like, do you smoke normally mediums? Do you like a Maduro? Would you rather have a natural? And give them something that fits that, because honestly, some people just don't taste all the nuance anyway. And without experience, you're not going to be tasting, like the subtle leather notes in the GMFF. There is something that inherently leathery to me, having been raised on a horse farm and My dad was a horse trader. Going to a tack room and that smell of leather, in this cigar, that's all I pick up. And that's based on personal experience. Like, I know what a tack room smells like, and gosh darn it, that's what I get out of this GMFF. There's a lot of that leather. And people are like, well, have you ever tasted leather? No, you don't have to taste leather, because most of your most of your taste is based on aroma. So if you've smelled leather and you're smoking that cigar, that's kind of what you're going to pick up. So it's all based on personal aromatic memory. And if you don't have the exposure to how to tie that to what's in the cigar, it doesn't matter. You know, medium smoke, you like it, smoke it. If you like acid, smoke it. You know, you smoke what meets your experience, what's going to make your experience better. I don't care what it is.
You know, you brought up an interesting point about you. Oh, shoot, I went down to light my cigar and I lost my train of thought. You had talked about smell and what people pull out of it. You could always, somebody that's a heavy cigar smoker that's listening to somebody explain, that knows that, right? Because all flavors of cigars are just smells that bring you back. And just memories. That's what a flavor of a cigar is. It's a memory. Your depth of food knowledge, your depth of palate, what you've eaten. And it's always fun to listen to people talk about what they tasted a cigar. And you could almost tell their diet based on what they're picking out. Like one of my good buddies, Travis Pappenheim's, was one of Altadis's trainers, master guru tobacconists. And he's like, I know chocolate's there. I haven't eaten chocolate in years. I'm a diabetic. So he's like, every time somebody tastes chocolate, I just look at him and go, that's awesome. He goes, I just don't eat enough chocolate to really truly remember what it tasted like. So when you hear people go, I picked out blueberry cobbler, you're like, you eat a lot of sweets, man. Like, you're eating a lot of, I taste Cooler Ranch Doritos. What are you snacking on at night? But to your point too, if you're going to have a new cigar you've never had, clean your palate. Because your dinner, your breakfast, your lunch, your snack, your liquor, your anything other than water potentially could taint in on that flavor complexity and profile. And then when you go back to smoke it again, it might be a little bit different than how you remember it. So how do you clean your profile, Greg, from a long day of smoking?
You know, well, so I usually do it with another cigar. and so
hair of the dog.
Yeah. Sure. So if I find that my palate's getting burned out, I'll go back to mild just to try to balance out the palate. So like at an event when I'm going to smoke 5 or 6 or 7 cigars, you know, I get 4 cigars in. My next one's probably going to be an Avalanche, which is my mildest cigar, just to kind of reset. But in terms of a liquid, I think apple juice is probably the best pairing thing for a cigar. A lot of your master blenders that are testing tobacco right off the pelons are going to be doing apple juice or coffee. Like those are the top two. Mostly coffee, but apple juice is kind of the new thing. And apple juice is amazing.
Now, it's important to differentiate between 100% or just apple juice.
Just apple juice.
Okay, so it doesn't necessarily. So the 100% versus the all sugar version of it is not necessarily going to make the difference.
Yeah, but just straight up apple juice is just, it does something to your palate to kind of open it up to these other experiences. So if you've never tried apple juice with a cigar, highly recommend it. But when we're testing cigars at the factory, it's usually coffee. And then the longer we're there, it moves into Presidente beer, and then it moves into bourbon, and then, you know, you move on to whatever your common drink is. Because honestly, I want my cigars to pair well with a lot of different things. But when it comes down to finally selecting a blend, so like the Intimidador, we had the core figured out, but we had 4 different wrappers that we were trying to buy for what we were going to release. And honestly, I didn't want to release it with the San Andres, which is what we did. But I didn't want to because we already had some San Andres. But that blend just works so well with San Andres. But we're sitting in a restaurant in Santiago, Dominican Republic, smoking 4 different test blends at the same time with 4 different wrappers. And we did that with bourbon. And we're all drinking the same bourbon, smoking the same 4 cigars at the same time, and rating them as a group. Like, what do we think the wrapper is that works the best? Because when I'm smoking, for the most part, it's in the evening and I'm drinking bourbon. So I wanted it to be something that I knew I could enjoy with what I regularly smoke. But in the beginning, when we're testing the initial filler blend with different wrappers, it was all based on coffee. So we knew when we narrowed down the final filler with coffee, then we moved on to the experience with bourbon. I mean, there's a lot of people who just don't drink alcohol at all, and they're going to find their perfect pairing, whether it's, root beer, or it's apple juice, or it's, they love a nice Coke or a Coke Zero, whatever. I don't care what you pair it with, but what your experience is going to be like because you're always drinking that same thing. And then the cigars are going to speak to that pairing, and you'll figure out what works for your palate. And it might not be anything in my line, and that's okay. But for me, bourbon. So if you smoke my cigars, if you're a bourbon drinker, you're going to see that those cigars are kind of designed for that particular mode of pairing.
Well, Abe the Babdover at Smokin' introduced me to small batch root beer as far as mixing it with cigars.
Yeah.
Not A&W, not mug, not whatever the other big stuff, but like a good small batch, small brew root beers always seem to go really, really well. That creaminess of it just seems to bring out most cigars. So what is your approach to picking a pairing? Where do you even start?
So I don't think there's a perfect pairing for a cigar, and here's why. If let's say you have a bottle of Pappy, very rare bourbon, you want to really experience that Pappy. So you don't want to have a cigar that's going to overwhelm the experience of the bourbon. On the flip side, if you have an Opus X Purple Rain, and all you really want to do, you've spent a lot of money on that stick, and you really want to enjoy that cigar, you don't want to have something that's too overwhelming. So you're probably going to pick a bourbon like an Eagle Rare that's got 10 years on it. It's very smooth. It's not high proof. And you're really going to be able to enjoy the cigar, and the bourbon's just kind of sitting in the background. So it's all kind of about what experience you're trying to create. Are you focused on the cigar? Are you focused on the bourbon? And then in the end, if you want to enjoy both, you pick something that kind of levels up in the same way. An example, so I did a pairing event with Haymarket Coffee. A friend of mine owns this brand called Haymarket Coffee. And we sat around before that event trying to figure out what the perfect pairing was. And I had this illusion that a dark roast coffee would be the best coffee with the Midnight Bender, because that was our medium full cigar, the strongest cigar at the time. And it turned out that it wasn't. Like we wanted a medium roast coffee with a darker cigar and a dark roast coffee with a lighter cigar. So it depends on what you're pairing with and the experience you're trying to create. But when we smoked the Midnight Bender with a regular medium roast, first of all, we got high as crap because a medium roast has higher caffeine than a dark roast.
Correct.
And the dark wrapper actually has lower nicotine than a light wrapper, but the combination was just overwhelming. Like we smoked 5 cigars with 5 different coffees that day, and we were high as a kite. I don't think any of us slept that night before the event. But it's, I don't think there's any perfect pairing. I think it's just, what are you trying to do? What are you trying to accomplish? Do you want to enjoy that bottle of Pappy? By the way, I've only had Pappy once, so that's just a rare example. Or do you really want to, enjoy the cigar? So you pair it perfectly. I like Isla Scotches, which are like drinking a campfire.
Ardbeg, Lefroy, Lagavulin.
Lefroy, Lagavulin. I love those, but you lose the cigar in those entirely. So it doesn't matter what cigar you put with them. It's like the Scotch is just overpowering. So again, it's what you want to accomplish.
I'll tell you right now, I agree with you wholeheartedly, especially from Islay. The only cigar that I've ever smoked, or the only brand that I've ever smoked to overpower anything from Islay is an Espinosa. That's it. You lose. You're 100% correct in that heavy peat. You lose. It's a fog. It's a mouth fog. You need full, high, heavy horsepower, spicy pepper to kind of cut through that extreme peatiness. So with that, I totally agree with you. But
Yeah.
I love Lagavulin. I love it so much. Did you ever
Yeah.
watch the show Parks and Rec?
Yeah.
So Ron Swanson, the greatest TV character ever created,
Hmm.
uh, ends up buying Lagavulin at the end. Because he buried a bunch of gold and he had like millions and millions of dollars and needed to spend it for an investment. Well, Lagavulin released a what's his name, Nick Offerman edition bottle, and now they release the Nick Offerman who played Ron Swanson edition bottle every year. So I buy it, but it release like 2 or 3 of them every year. I buy them all the time. They're amazing. Um, but Bruce was looking through your website, um, and Bruce is somebody that buys a lot of cigars from people that are on this show. He was wondering why the Intimidator is not on the website.
I guess because I'm not a web developer.
Okay,
It,
so it's
it,
just not up yet.
it just hasn't caught up yet. It's terrible. It's there. There's so many hats you wear. I mean, I'm a one-man show. So I've been doing it all, and it's an oversight. I'll definitely do it in the next week. Get that uploaded. But it's you pick your priorities. Like what are you going to do? What are you trying to accomplish today? And that, for some reason, that's just a slip. And I'm glad he brought it up because it needs to be on there, and probably the GMFF as well. But it's you wear so many hats. You're the accountant. I used to do all my shipping. Now Illusion out of Reno does my shipping and my fulfillment, and they're also my
Nice.
importer. So they're doing a lot of the stuff that used to take up time for me. But if I'm not on the road, I'm not selling cigars, and I just there's stuff that just slips, and it's an honest mistake. And like I said, I'm glad it came up because I do need to get that on there, and probably need to put something on there about the event exclusive GMFF. So it's just so much to do. People don't realize that as a one man show, like what have you got to do? And I can't do it all, but I'll make that a priority and we'll get that up there.
Something that might be beneficial for you is Fiverr, if you're
Oh yeah,
familiar with it.
I
That's a
am.
great.
I've used them for a lot of logo development.
Yeah, yeah. You could get them to use the same guy for web development and keep the cost down. But hey, leave it up to whenever you come on a show. Whoever's watching is going to figure out what needs to be fixed. So that's just part of coming on these things. Um, but you, being that you are a one man show, before we kind of get into the lightning round here and wrap up the show, what is your selling strategy? And what I mean by that is manufacturer or the owners or manufacturers go into a lounge one of two ways: boisterous and loud and let everybody know it's them, or quiet and covert and scope everything out to make sure that you even want to be part of it. So where do you fall?
So there's a really good friend of mine, Raj, who I asked him in the very beginning. I said, "Look, I see all of these brand owners wearing blazers at their events," and I said, "I'm not really a blazer guy. What should I do?" And he said, "You need to be yourself. You need to be genuine. People need to see you for who you are." And so I wear polos with my logo on them for the most part. Sometimes it's a quarter zip like this with a logo on it. And that's what I wear all the time. So you'll never see me. Well, I don't want to say never. You've never seen me though at an event wearing a blazer, just not who I am. And I think that's the same thing with, how I present myself. I present myself as who I am, and you follow your examples. I follow Jerry Tuttle as an admiral and his example of his calm, strong leadership. or my dad who never put someone in the wrong saddle. I just want to build a relationship. I think that when I did recruiting and I was trying to hire people for jobs, I never put someone on the wrong job at the wrong time. It was all about making a perfect match so they'd last there forever. You know, I wanted them to stay on the job forever. That was the goal. And same thing with cigar sales. It's all about building that relationship. I think that's the most critical. You know, the shops that sell the most of my cigars are people that I really connect with. I'm not loud, but I love those loud guys. You know, Steve Saka, who I think was on in December. I mean, he fills a room. Matt Booth fills a room.
Oh, Boofy,
Oh
yeah.
yeah, Boofy, baby. Caldwell fills a room.
Oh yeah.
I mean, Matt Booth makes urinal cakes with his face on them, so we can all piss on them at PCA. That's the kind of thing that I don't do, but I totally respect. I mean, that's amazing, right?
Yeah, he
That's
made a giant
incredible.
condom for his studio area at PCA 2 years ago in an interview with Matthew Tobacco. He's like, "Why is the condom wrapper here?" He goes, "Because my brand fucks."
Yeah.
And then he started to play the nervous game with Matthew Tobacco, putting his hand up his leg and sliding it up to see where you'd tell him to stop. So, like, yes, you're right. You're right. You just got to be yourself.
Yeah, Caldwell does chapstick that says anal lube on it. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, so there's different. I mean, you just have to be who you are. I mean, you know, Carlito rolls in his Panama hat and his great suit. And, you know, when he did his birthday party, he had multiple costume changes. And that's who he is. You know, I think as long as we're all ourselves and you're authentic, like that's what sells cigars. Just be who you are, just be authentic. And I'm more of that relationship building, quiet behind the scenes. I've often questioned it. It's a great question because I've often questioned myself, like, do I need to be louder? Do I need to try to fill a room more? Or is the hair enough? I don't know. It's just this constant battle of what makes sense. And for me, I'm just me.
And that's really all you can be and that's like the best answer you could give, because that means you're more of a chameleon than a specific style. It's probably more of reading the person you're also with. If they're super excited, you're probably more excited. You know, if they're a little bit calmer, you're probably a little bit calmer. So that's an asset to be able to regulate yourself in that way.
Yeah, I call it speaking to your audience. You know, you just become, yeah, a chameleon's a perfect word. It's not that you're trying to be someone you're not. It's just that, you know, when I was doing recruiting, you know, sometimes you're dealing with the president of a company, you're trying to hire presidents for another company, and sometimes you're dealing with an admin at a lower level or an entry level software programmer. You just, you have to have this ability to speak to your audience. Like, and I guess I've grown comfortable with that. I don't consider it being fake. It's just I know how to relate to people at many levels, and I'm really comfortable with it.
You have enough personality for every situation.
I think so.
Now, the other thing I wanted to say to you is we have something quite in common. You grew up riding horses and on horseback. I, for 13 summers, taught horseback riding at a Christian camp in Wisconsin. So I'll share with you my both life threatening story if you share with me yours, because I know you've got them. Don't even tell me every horseback rider's died at least 10 times almost if you've ridden for over 5 years. You
So
first.
you want me to share? You want me to share mine first?
Yeah, I'll go first. We'll finish with yours.
All right.
We had just gotten at this Christian camp. All the horses were named after Bible characters. We had just traded two foals, two colt foals, for three ranching horses out of Montana that we named Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. The youngest one was 16. I think the oldest one was 22. They all grew up working together. I'd never in my entire life been on a horse like this with this much training ever. And so we got these horses over winter break, or it was about February when we got them. And I was up there for winter camp, and they were telling us about them. And I went up there early in May. And every year, Silver Birch puts all the horses. There's about 75 horses. They put them out to a big pasture, which is a friend of the camp, for winter, and they keep about 35 horses or 30 horses at the camp during winter camp. It's obviously smaller, less rides. And so we bring these horses out. We're like, let's take these guys out and round up the other horses like we do every year. We'll just kind of just ride them around a little bit. Yeah, we had no idea what we were getting into. These were on autopilot. We took the horses off, walked out in the field. They saw the area, the herd. They realized, because we walked them from the gate, knew exactly what to do. They knew their role. They all three walked, and we kind of looked at each other and were like, okay, we'll just go. And then all of a sudden they just went. But what we noticed is that they all three literally head nodded to each other. And then all of a sudden, the two I was in the middle. I've never held onto a saddle horn before in my life like this. All of a sudden, the two on the outside went super wide, and mine went right down the middle for the cut. So each horse, it would split the herd, and then each horse would bring their sections back. Oh my gosh. I never experienced a rollback before on a horse, which, if nobody understands what that is, it's the horse going as fast as it can forward, hockey slides, turns around and goes the other direction. And when you're not expecting it, and it's on autopilot, you didn't ask it to do it, you're on the side of the horse like this, hanging on for dear life. Well, needless to say, about 20 minutes went by, and all the horses were brought right back to the gate and rounded up. And the three of us were all hanging onto our saddle horns. I'd already lost the reins. They were all hanging onto our saddle horns. We looked at each other and was like, oh my gosh, what? Let's do it again. Let's do it again. Now that we know what to. So we had a lot of fun with them over the next couple of years, because they were able to do stuff that our horses couldn't do.
So my dad was a horse trader. So every Friday at Eiler's auction in Thurmont, Maryland, my dad would buy 15 to 20 horses. And then we bring them back to the farm, and I would have to ride those 15 or 20 horses over the next 7 days and figure out which ones we could sell, for more money than we had got them for at auction. We take the rest back to auction, buy another 15 to 20. So I rode a lot of horses, and probably the craziest one, and I learned this lesson after the fact, you learn as you go. This was a former racehorse, and racehorses are tattooed inside their upper lip. Mm-hmm. So they've got a number on them. Mm-hmm. And my dad knew this. I didn't know this. He liked to play a lot of great tricks to, teach me to be a man, I guess. And he put me on this former racehorse, and the horse's name was Baldwin. And that horse, I just gave it a little tiny tap with a spur, and that horse took off. And I literally just rolled right off the back of the horse. Like, complete horse took off. It was gone. That horse wanted to be my horse for a while, and I refused to call a horse Baldwin, so I called it Mr. B. And I actually named my second test blend the Mr. B. So that's one experience. But the most dangerous thing I've ever done is I used to ride. So I started in the rodeo doing barrel racing, the very common, easy sport in the rodeo. You just turn barrels real quick, and you get a good horse, you can win. And then I moved up to roping, calf roping, and then team roping, and then bronco riding. So I did bronco riding for a couple of years, and then all the hot girls in the rodeo were going after the bull riders. I was like, oh, well, I want the hotter girls too, so I'll ride some bulls, and they move slower than horses, so it should be relatively easy. And honestly, it's kind of easier to ride a bull for the most part. The problem is whether you get off after 8 seconds on your own volition or they buck you off, they turn around and try to kill you. So there was an attempted murder multiple times riding bulls. And after 8 bulls, I never rode another bull again because those girls were not attractive enough to risk my life. So I would say bull riding, don't try it. It's and I've been kicked in the chest by horses. I mean, you're around horses all the time, you're going to get injured. never broke a bone. Even in bull riding, never broke a bone. Just, I guess I worked on a dairy farm, drank a lot of milk. I guess I was very fortunate. But yeah, bull riding, definitely the most dangerous thing. But with horses, it was that one racehorse that just took off. And I rolled off the back of that thing, and the horse just was gone. And, what can you do? Eventually, you can't.
Have you ever done a jump on when they do their roll in the dirt, roll in the sand? As they're rolling and going to get back up, you just jump on their back real quick.
Never done that.
That'll get you bucked off sometimes. That's it's just stupid things that like we all did. Like I said, with horses, you're like, oh yeah, we'll be good. We'll be good. But no, I've been kicked, half kicked, stepped on, bit, smashed into trees. The worst step on I ever had was a Clydesdale. Silver Birch had a huge Clydesdale we called Sugar that was our test horse. If somebody was scared they were going to fall off, we would put them on Sugar and walk them around the arena. And if they fell off, they weren't allowed to ride. Because you could sit Indian style on a Clydesdale and read a book, and you're totally fine. So, but she would pull the sleigh, and she stepped on my foot one time, and I never thought it could hurt that bad. But my God, it just pounded it into the dirt and the mud. But no, I love Tennessee Walkers were my favorite because they pace walk, they don't trot, they don't crack your nuts.
Yeah, we had a Tennessee Walker named Midnight that was our number one draft horse. My dad had a company called Marriage and a Carriage, so we take people to weddings in a horse and buggy. So we had a Surrey with a fringe on top, and Midnight was the primary one. Then we had another one named Duke that was kind of a quarter horse mix, and I would take them. I would go to the high school football game to work out the buggy horses. I would take them the 3 miles to the football game, and I'd tie them up, and all the other country guys were there with their Camaros and Mustangs, but all the girls wanted to come and pet my horse. So I was, king for a day. Everyone, can we go for riding the buggy? Oh yeah, I'll take you for riding the buggy.
That reminds me of that Seinfeld episode where Kramer takes the buggy from his friend and ends up giving it like beefaroni and everything else.
Well, we did the same. My dad, he heard the stories after the fact, just like all dads do. We would take him we had a national park next to our farm, and we'd ride the horses through. We had a swimming hole that was deep enough for the horses to swim in. And then we'd go to this pizza place called Campanaro's, and we would always give our horses a Coke. Like, they love drinking Coke.
They'll take the bottle and go straight up with it.
Oh, yeah, they freaking loved it. My dad, when he heard about that later, he's like, I knew you guys were doing that. I'm like, no, you didn't. But we had a great time. Horses love anything sweet, so they love drinking a Coca-Cola.
Oh yeah, and I will say, I don't care what kind of vehicle you drive. I don't care how many horsepower it is. I don't care how expensive it is, how much your foot vibrates when you step on the gas and you feel it through the seat. There is nothing in life like being 180-pound, 200 at the time. At the time, people, at the time, I was about 180, 200 pounds. It's not now, all right? And just feeling that horse from stop to a canter in minutes to a gallop to and you're like, oh my gosh, there's nothing like having that kind of feeling, that kind of power and those muscles, and you literally, after you ride the same horse over and over and over, you really do develop that, like, I could literally feel when you're going to turn. I can feel how you're going to react. And that was one of my favorite things about horses is just experiencing just all of that raw power. And until you do, you don't really understand why they call it horsepower, in my opinion.
Yeah, we used to be a part of the Potomac Hunt Club, so we'd go fox hunting. And my dad had this majestic thoroughbred, and I had a part Shire, part paint, part Appaloosa. So the Shire, being a draft horse, this was a very broad horse.
Yeah.
It was only 15 and a half hands. I'd show up with this horse with my English helmet on and, drop an English saddle on it, which you had to have a very long cinch to get around its broad stomach. And everyone would laugh, and how could that thing jump? And that thing was so majestic. Even though it was a huge horse, it would jump the jumps and it would follow the hounds, and it was just a great horse. But yeah, it's one of those just great experiences. Like, that horse had incredible power, but it looked like none of the other horses that were in the fox hunt group. They're all riding these majestic chestnut horses with
Or Arabians,
white fetlocks, and and they've got their great, they're very trim horses, and I've got this big fat part Shire jumping jumps and having a great time.
Yeah, was it? Somebody told me the Arab horses are the supermodels, and the Arabian horses are supermodels, and the Tennessee Walkers are the Hummers.
Oh yeah.
you could get through anything in one. Well, I tell you, Greg, here in closing, just have some quick lightning round questions to throw your direction. A few of them you answered tonight, and then we'll let you close the show here. What is your favorite size Vitola?
Honestly, I think a Corona is my new favorite. I've gone through phases, but I think, the Corona is called the Crown because it's supposed to be the ideal size to test a blend. I didn't know that when I started. So we test all our blends in a 6x50 Toro. And we still do, just because we understand how that operates in our palates. But the Corona is just, it's a size that just really works. It's a 45, maybe an hour smoke at the most, a lot of flavor from the wrapper. I think the blends just kind of speak loudest in a Corona.
What is your favorite cut?
It depends on the blend. So in a Gordo, I'll use a punch because I don't want too much airflow. In any cigar that has double Ligero, or like a lot of Ligero, I like a V cut because it kind of gets down into the core and it's drawing more heat into that Ligero to get it burning a little bit hotter.
Okay.
So I get more flavor out of that. But 90% of the time, I'm just using a straight cut on most cigars, and I'm cutting it very shallow to start, seeing how the draw is, going a little bit deeper if I have to.
Do you do the master blender's pick?
The master blender's pick?
Fingernail. I've always heard it as like I use my fingernail. Every master blender I talk to is just like, I use my fingernail.
So I'll use that on a pigtail for sure, because that's the whole point of a pigtail, or on a chisel, the LFD chisel, you just kind of pop that cap off.
Yep.
But for the most part, I don't use my fingernails or my teeth. Obviously, if I don't have a cutter around, I'm going to use my teeth, but my teeth are not that sharp. I'm old.
What is your favorite pairing? If you only had, you mentioned a few of them, but if you only had one, what would it be?
It would be Eagle Rare.
Okay.
And the crazy thing is, when I started drinking Eagle Rare, it was $26 a bottle. It's a 10-year-old bourbon. It was the best value in bourbon. You could find it anywhere. No one drank it. Apparently, I told too many people about it. And now you can't find it anywhere. So it's still my favorite. I probably have 5 bottles, which is not a lot of bottles. And I drink them, very sparingly, only for my first drink of the night. And I'll switch to, like tonight, it's Basil Hayden. Switch
That's
to something
a good one too.
Yeah, but Eagle Rare, this is my little handle of Basil Hayden that I'm working. There's not a lot left. I gotta finish that tonight. So, but it's Eagle Rare. Eagle Rare, it's low proof. It's very sweet, smooth. There's a lot of caramel and vanilla, so it's drawing out those flavors of a cigar, whether it's a San Andres wrapper with a lot of cocoa and coffee hiding in the background, or it's a Habano that's more floral and feel. It just seems to work with most things.
So people are asking here, which cigar do you have that pairs best with Eagle Rare?
That pairs best with Eagle Rare?
Yeah.
Probably the Sun Country. Because there's just a lot of background flavor there, and the Eagle Rare doesn't compete with it. Sun Country is just a very complex blend. There's so much flavor in the background. And with Eagle Rare being a lower proof and just, 10 years of age, it's very smooth. It doesn't compete with it. They make a great pair because they're not fighting each other.
I love it. I love it. What is a rapper that you have not worked with that you would love to work with?
Sumatra. Sumatra or Cameroon. And so the Dominican Republic has a great history of putting a tariff on any imported tobacco to support the industry in their country. So they want you to use Dominican. The problem with Dominican is Dominican wrappers are very difficult to grow. Fuente has done a great job at creating hybrids. So the Opus X is a Dominican Puro with a Dominican wrapper. There's some Davidoff smokes that have a Dominican wrapper. So those companies that have the wherewithal to support those crops and invest the money in things that are very complicated, they can use those. But then the other industries like me, I would love to use Sumatra, but there's a 20% tariff and it's a very expensive tobacco. I would love to use Cameroon, but it's 20% tariff and it's very expensive. So trying to be competitive as a boutique, those tobaccos, they elude me a little bit, but probably Sumatra first, then Cameroon.
And then define boutique cigar.
So I think the definition is, so I'm on the board with the Boutique Cigar Association. And the definition has historically been within that community $1 million worth of cigars imported or 1 million cigars imported. It depends on who's defining it. So there's no real definition, but from my perspective, it's that $1 million mark.
Okay. And I always ask because everyone's got a little bit of a different definition.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's plenty of brands that are very boutique-ish. So, you look at Tatuaje, and they're doing boutique things, but they're a big company. They're doing things, and when I say boutique things, I mean they're using exclusive tobaccos that are very rare, that have small production, but they're coming out with some lines that they're able to find that production. And you look at a company like one of the big guys, like Fuente or Davidoff, they come out with a new line, and they've got to get 1 million pounds of tobacco. So they can't do the same things that a boutique cigar company can do. They can't find this rare tobacco that's in limited quantities and come out with any kind of a line because they wouldn't be able to have the production that would support all the investment to create this new line. So boutique cigar companies can create cigars using small batch tobaccos, almost like small batch coffee from, one plantation in Kenya or one coffee plantation in El Salvador. Boutique cigar companies can do that. And Tatuaje, even though I don't think that they're boutique, they have this boutique mentality. I would say similar to Roma Craft, where there's this boutique mentality, but they're well over that $1 million a year.
So you do subscribe to the fact that a big company can have a boutique style line, and
Absolutely.
that line is boutique. Would you call it boutique-y or would you call it boutique, that line? Because the definitions are different.
Yeah, so it depends on whether you're defining the company or the line. So yeah, so I think that a boutique cigar could be made by a large company as long as it's going to meet the criteria of being something that's small production, that you're using a tobacco that's so unique that you couldn't do a broad production line.
Mm-hmm.
I think, and by the way, I'm not speaking for the Boutique Cigar Association. This is just Greg talking.
Sure.
And that's why I say Tatuaje is doing some of those things. Roma Craft is doing some of those things. But then you get to the bigger lines, and it's very hard for them to do something that's really boutique because of the volume they need to produce to make sense.
I absolutely agree with that. I think there could be a boutique-y line inside of a big company. But it doesn't, I don't think a big company could have a boutique cigar. I think it's boutique-y. As in order for it to be a boutique cigar, you got to be a boutique company, but you can have something similar to it, if that makes sense.
That's a great way to describe it. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, and then last question of the night. Oh gosh, it was in my head that we got sidetracked. What is your favorite rapper? Not a rapper you haven't worked with, but you're just downright favorite rapper.
It's got to be San Andreas. I just love it. I like, I mentioned the Intimidador. I didn't want to release that in a San Andreas, but in the end, like that was the wrapper that just worked so well with the filler. It's one of those switch hitters that, you can put any kind of a core blend under it and it's just going to add value. And so I think San Andreas is probably the one.
Awesome, awesome. Well, Greg, thank you so much, man, for coming on tonight. I'm going to give you the opportunity before we sign off on the show. Tell everybody where to find you. Tell everybody your website. Tell everybody an online store that they could go at and find you, because I know Bruce is probably digging around. And then there was a question up here. Are you going to be at the Pittsburgh Crawl again this year?
It's my plan to be there for sure. Absolutely. I've been on the crawl the last 2 years as one of the sponsors of the crawl. The Pittsburgh Crawl is something very unique. Most people haven't heard of it, but it's been around for decades. And it's basically a bunch of guys get on a bus and they go from cigar shop to cigar shop in the Pittsburgh area. They end at one of them. They have a big dinner. We have a great time. And it's always been fun for me. My family's from Pennsylvania. Love building the market in Pittsburgh, which is really cigar friendly, just a great place to be. I mean, you've got Leaf and Bean there. You've got the Vault, which is a new shop that opened up. You've got Allegheny Smoke Shop. There's Cigarro and north of Pittsburgh. Just a lot of incredible shops there that do great stuff and, part of the culture. So I'll definitely try to be there. And then to answer the other question about what I want people to know. So www.fyl.cigars, great place to find retailer locations. The biggest thing you can do for me as a fan of Fortaleza is if you're in your local shop, even if you know that they don't carry me, just ask them every time you're in there. Do you have Fortaleza y Libre? I saw them on a show. I've loved their cigars. I wish you would carry them. I'd buy them here, because it's all about brand recognition. And really, brand recognition comes from the fans. So you guys do more work for me than I could ever do just by showing up and saying, where are these cigars? Do you carry these cigars? Because that creates brand recognition with those retailers. And I'll take all the help I can get, guys. Thanks for your support.
Well, really, really appreciate you coming on tonight. You always have a home here at the Rocky Mountain Cigar Show, and please come back next time you want to launch something new. I'd love to have you back on, and we'll dive a little bit deeper into your background and what makes you tick, and we'll get a nice update on Fortaleza y Libre. Cigars, Fortaleza y Libre. I'll get it right at the end of the show, right when we're about to just be done with it, right?
That's perfect.
It's normally how it works. So thank you so much for being my first show of the year. I really appreciate it. Everybody's saying it was a great show, so thank you so much. And until we see you all again, smoke what you like, smoke as often as you can, and have a great, great rest of your week. Bye, everyone.
Thank you very much.